Guys, how are you?
I'm fine, my mate. How are you?
Very
Hello,
well.
Luigi.
Good to
Good to
see you,
see us
Steve.
all
Good to see you,
again. Good
Leon.
to see us. Yeah.
Lou, how are you? All charged up, mate?
I'm all rested up.
Beautiful.
Ready to
Excellent.
go.
So we're going to carry on with our discussion around trust today, and we've moved to the development of trust from the manual. So I'm going to read out the 6 stages, and then we're going to go back and look at these sections, see how far we get in today's talk. So the development of trust. First, they must go through what might be called a period of undoing. This need not be painful, but it usually is so experienced. It seems as if things are being taken away, and it is rarely understood initially that their lack of value is merely being recognized. How can lack of value be perceived unless the perceiver is in a position where he must see things in a different light? He's not yet at a point at which he can make the shift entirely internally. And so the plan will sometimes call for changes in what seem to be external circumstances. These changes are always helpful. When the teacher of God has learned that much, he goes on to the second stage. Next, the teacher of God must go through a period of sorting out. This is always somewhat difficult because having learned that the changes in his life are always helpful, he must now decide all things on the basis of whether they increase the helpfulness or hamper it. He'll find that many, if not most of the things he valued before, will merely hinder his ability to transfer what he has learned to new situations as they arise. Because he has valued what is really valueless, he will not generalize the lesson for fear of loss and sacrifice. It takes great learning to understand that all things, events, encounters, and circumstances are helpful. It is only to the extent to which they are helpful that any degree of reality should be accorded them in this world of illusion. The word value can apply to nothing else. The third stage through which the teacher of God must go can be called a period of relinquishment. If this is interpreted as giving up the desirable, it will engender enormous conflict. Few teachers of God escape this distress entirely. There is, however, no point in sorting out the valuable from the valueless unless the next obvious step is taken. Therefore, the period of overlap is apt to be one in which the teacher of God feels called upon to sacrifice his own best interests on behalf of truth. He's not realized as yet how wholly impossible such a demand would be. He can learn this only as he actually does give up the valueless. Through this, he learns that where he anticipated grief, he finds a happy lightheartedness instead. Where he thought something was asked of him, he finds a gift bestowed on him. Now comes a period of settling down. This is a quiet time in which the teacher of God rests a while in reasonable peace. Now he consolidates his learning. Now he begins to see the transfer value of what he's learned. Its potential is literally staggering, and the teacher of God is now at the point in his progress at which he sees in it his whole way out. Give up what you do not want and keep what you do. How simple is the obvious, and how easy to do. The teacher of God needs this period of respite. He's not yet come as far as he thinks, yet when he is ready to go on, he goes with mighty companions beside him. Now he rests a while and gathers them before going on. He will not go on from here alone. The next stage is indeed a period of unsettling. Now must the teacher of God understand that he did not really know what was valuable and what was valueless. All that he really learned so far was that he did not want the valueless and that he did want the valuable. Yet his own sorting out was meaningless in teaching him the difference. The idea of sacrifice, so central to his own thought system, had made it impossible for him to judge. He thought he learned willingness, but now he sees that he does not know what the willingness is for. And now he must attain a state that may remain impossible to reach for a long, long time. He must learn to lay all judgment aside and ask only what he really wants in every circumstance. Were not each step in this direction so heavily reinforced, it would be hard indeed. And finally, there is a period of achievement. It is here that learning is consolidated. Now, what was seen as merely shadows before becomes solid gains to be counted on in all emergencies, as well as tranquil times. Indeed, the tranquility is their result, the outcome of honest learning, consistency of thought, and full transfer. This is the stage of real peace, for here is heaven's state fully reflected. From here, the way to heaven is open and easy. In fact, it is here. Who would go anywhere if peace of mind is already complete? And who would seek to change tranquility for something more desirable? What could be more desirable than this?
What indeed?
Wow.
The period of undoing.
I'm going to jump in with something that I've been turning over in my mind to share with you both in the run up to today, just sort of preparing and, engaging with this. And what it was is more like a principle. I don't even know if it applies to one stage or to all stages merged together. But the thing that came to mind for me was like a microscope where you can twist the dial to zoom in and zoom out. And if I was to just take the first stage, a period of undoing, I can transfer that across decades in my life. And then I can also hone it right in to this week or to today. And in much the same way as I'm reading those things out and we're all listening, and you just kind of, it's presented to you as 6 stages, but really it's just one process where you've been had your ears closed, if you like, and you've had this insular belief that you know what's best and you can value everything and give value and blah blah blah, and then that's very very gently just shifted so that you don't feel like something's being torn away from you, because then you'll clam up and you'll resist. And then in that gentle, it's not even coercion, is it, in that gentle introduction to the alternative, your attraction is just naturally shifted to say yes to that listening. And then once you've adjusted yourself, once you have tuned the radio into the new station, on that station is all of these mighty companions, so you don't go forward with your experience on your own. But you could think to yourself, oh, I've gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh yeah, I identify with all of that. But then one day you might be having an experience in step 2. The next day you might have an experience of step 4, step 1, step 6, step 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as it says in the course, like, God himself takes the final step. All these steps before it, we've got to sort out ourselves. And that's what this is all about, isn't it? Like it says, period of undoing. The thing that needed undoing for me, really, was not just the acceptance that I had no past, though I was relieved about that, but the acceptance that neither does anybody else. And that really hit me. It's me won't like if I'm blaming somebody for something or I'm annoyed with somebody about something, they haven't got no past, they didn't do it. So just forgive them. It doesn't, it's not really everything. It's like anything, like everybody. If I've got no past, and neither are they. So just forgive yourself, and by forgiving yourself, you forgive all them at the same time,
Mm.
because they're your projections.
Mm.
As you learn to write, I've learned to realise,
But that
So that
undoing for me, I can think, like I said, I can see that over my entire life, having that gentle turnaround of what I thought was valuable and valueless.
Well, it's like when you look back to when you're a teenager, what's valuable when you're a teenager? You're looking back now at my age, like, nearly 70, like, you look back and you think, well, it's of no value to me now. The whole, my life isn't interested in that stuff anymore, to the extent I don't consider certain things important anymore, which were vital to me when I was a teenager. And as you progress through life, but really none of it is just about experiencing the dream, isn't it? And then you realize that all you're doing is experiencing a dream, and no matter what it all was through the
Yeah.
microscope, you know,
Yeah.
that's the wonder of it.
Yeah. To
Yeah.
add to what you've said, Leon, as we ended off the last episode, through my own direct experience, not reading this in a book, it's really the Ouroboros, the snake swallowing his own tail. It's actually a coil.
Mm.
From the front, it looks like he's swallowing his tail, but turn it on its side and you notice it's like the seasons. We're just going around in circles, nowhere faster. And it's choose again, choose again, choose again. And so you're going through those first 5 phases until God takes the final step. And every time you're raising your awareness of the awareness you are, of the infinite lightness of being you are. You're you're remembering and you're refining and you refine and you refine. And anyone that's been doing the course for a couple of years or a century knows that when you thought you were ready to go out and teach, you really thought you had a good grasp on it. When you look back now, you realize you've just kept refining it. You've just kept refining it. And what was, as Steve was saying, in his life, what was important when he was a teenager no longer is now. It's also in the course. What was important when I started the course is no longer jumping out at me now, because those have been healed, those have been dealt with, those have been transcended.
Yeah.
The one thing that still comes up for me now is that the judgment,
Mm-hmm.
when I hear other teachers misinterpreting the course in my understanding. And there's a resistance to that. And that was a big wake up call for me a little while back while we were doing this series, in actual fact.
Yeah.
And I realized what I was doing. I was allowing it to become a conflict in my thought patterns. And so I got trapped in it again. And when we were preparing for this section 3 weeks ago, it really hit me like a steam train. I was saying, hey, I'm doing this. I'm doing this to myself. So I had to go and look for the conflict within myself. And it was simple. I found it. It religion based. It's the same conflict I had with religion, where they misinterpreting the teachings of Jesus in the Bible into a dualistic way of teaching it. And it would irritate me as a child, and then I would be asked to be quiet or leave the room or not speak up.
Mm.
And I noticed the same pattern. So the minute I moved into forgiveness, it was released.
And relief.
As the radio chatter stopped, as the ego mind stopped, no, I've just dialed the volume down and looking for a new station. The new station is the white noise.
Forgiveness FM.
Mm.
Yeah, Forgiveness FM. Yeah.
Beautiful. Steve,
Keep turning.
can you relate to, like, say for example, my journey, one of the things, the theme, if you like, has been safety, that go all the way back to like being maybe 5 years old and having my safety threatened because of the setup of my family unit, the way that my dad behaved. I didn't get to experience that safety, so that it was like a natural sense that I had to then move forward. It was something I had to learn. This is coming out my mouth without thinking about it, but I can already hear how pertinent and appropriate it is for the development of trust. It's like, I had to learn to feel safe. And it took me a long time to piece together even like my favorite lesson out the workbook. I don't know why, but it was, or I do now, but God goes with me wherever I go. It always just made me like, oh, God goes, And I think that those two things are the same side of that same coin, where I never got to experience safety for decades, So therefore, that was my thing. And then just to hear Lou saying the judgment, and then you be quiet, you can see how that. I'm just wondering if you can identify something in your.
Well, it puts me in mind of my own upbringing. See, I'm a natural extrovert brought up by two introverts, right? Now that's sort of like it's always been told to stop showing off. Oh, will you stop doing that? Like stop showing off, stop doing this, stop doing that, and you become. It came out of me later on by becoming an actor and joining bands and all that, standing on stages, like busting out of something. Look, here I am. I don't want to be this being kept back, held back all the time mentally by don't do this, don't do it. My parents were great. They loved me. They were sort of kind of regimental though. Well, but that does it. I mean, I've always been looking for something though all my life. I left home at 16 and I've just been searching. I never had no problems going somewhere. When I went to Rwanda, like when I asked, but when I was the person I know was asking for volunteers to go to Rwanda, she got 11 blokes volunteer, but I was the only one that ended up going because at the time got closer, their bottles went, in the light of the genocide and all that. I didn't care about that. I just wanted to go out and help her do what she had to do. I'm not saying I was particularly brave or courageous, but it didn't bother me what bothered them. You see, I felt I had to go out and assist. They're given the chance to do that. And I did. It was one of the greatest times of my life, to be able to help these people, and I realized that my mission in life is to help people. I've always liked people. I've always had lots of friends because I couldn't be bothered to hate people. I couldn't be bothered to dislike anybody. Call it lazy. If somebody was nasty to me, I just didn't bother with them anymore. I can see the point of trying to be friends with people I don't like. Trying to be friends with people you don't like is a stupid thing to do. Like you have to keep on your same. but I
Yeah.
liked everybody, and I found if you treat people like you like them, they like you in return. No
Yes.
matter who they are.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I used to have this habit, like they talk about the local tough guy, like don't go near him, he'll kick your head in, all this stuff. I used to make a point and go and make friends with him. Not because I wanted his protection or anything, but I think for innerly, for some reason, I wanted to know why he was like that. But they never showed me that side. These guys never showed me that side. When you spoke to them like you're an ordinary bloke instead of showing any fear of them, they were great. In all cases, as far as I can remember. Apart from one nut case, but I won't bother getting into that because it doesn't really matter. But then again, he was a nutcase, he was a meat cleaver. Bloke who carries a meat cleaver around with him, one of them. He came up to me and asked me to lend him 10 quid. No, I thought, why not? Because I don't know you. And he just stared at me and walked off. But he didn't. He just walked off, and I thought, Christ for that, you know what I mean? This bloke a lunatic. But anyway, that's what happened. But it was a trust that I should do this,
Did you have a concealment thing then? Like say if you're, because I can relate to that from my relationship with my dad. Was like, as a kid, sense of rejection, then the shame because you can't work out what it's about, and then concealment. And I'm just wondering, did you shrink back into yourself as a natural reaction to your introverted parents' perception, going, well, you're too outward and confident. You need to put a lid on that.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. I did shrink back into myself, and I had to take special effort to, I've always had friends, but it was, I never put myself forward. Sometimes in positions where I should have done, I'd let the other people take the lead, whereas I felt I should have taken the lead because I wasn't good enough to take it. I wasn't, no, not good enough. I wasn't confident enough to take it. You see, it's like the way you're brought up, I suppose. If you're told, like, stop doing this, stop doing that, you think there's something wrong with you subconsciously, but you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Really, it's nothing, but you have to overcome that. And of course, you've got to learn what is there, the obstacles that are stopping you awakening. And one of those obstacles I had was not being sure of myself. In earlier years, that was,
But that's just conditioning, isn't it? And if you then take the context of this paragraph saying valuable and valueless, in a weird way, what was valuable, what was seen as valuable, was the act of shrinking back, the act of concealment. So
Yeah.
that undoing, to twist it around to go, actually, the value lies in, oh, here I am. It's okay to be me.
The real value, because I've always been searching all my life. Like I said to you once before in a meeting, like I had my own, before I come across A Course in Miracles, I had my own theory about what the afterlife was, because I always knew there was one. I don't know. I've never had no doubt about that. I've never been afraid of, what's afraid of death. I've wondered about death, but I've always had an inner knowing that there's an afterlife, but in what form it takes, I just don't know. I had this idea about frequencies, and I wasn't too far wrong either. Like heaven was like a great big radio, and the bad people go to the low frequency, and the good people go to the high frequency because they don't meet any devils in the high frequency because they can't go there. So everybody goes to this station which suits their frequency. And that's why there's all devils in hell, because they're all got the same frequency. This is the idea I had, and then I got the Course of Miracles, and I went, well, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's that sort of like that was my idea until I read the Course of Miracles. It made it a lot more plain. I could grasp, like, I think I read in Nissa Gadata's book, like, if as soon as somebody realizes there is a possible enlightenment, like this isn't just that you can wake up, there is a way out. As soon as you realize that, then you're the relief is, well, I'll find it. I'll find it. Because that with the Course, when it said these mornings telling me there is a way out, you are right. There is somewhere. Not exactly what you're thinking, but there is somewhere. And I wanted to find it. And that's why I so feverishly read the Course up until this day, 15 years ago. And I'd think about it and read bits of it and look at things about it every day. It's absolutely,
Yeah.
I'm devoted to it.
Lou?
Because I know it's true.
What you've just said, Steve, I actually made a statement last night in my talk, was that everybody that comes to the course has already gone through that first stage. Because you're already aware. The fact that you're searching means that you're aware that you're not in your most primordial natural state. You're looking for. So the first stage is that period of undoing is really you realize that your reality, your subjective reality, is not the absolute.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've come to this course already having traveled through that first stage. No one goes the Course of Miracles and then gets the first stage. They're already in the first stage, already into the second stage most often, because they realize they don't know and they're looking for meaning. The danger is not knowing, realizing you don't know, but wanting to bring old dogma into it. And that's when it becomes particularly difficult because
Yeah.
things don't add up. For example, let me use an example. If you come out of the Vedanta school and you believe that God is dreaming, then this is going to be a really, really tough period because, especially when it gets to the perceived lack of value, how can anything be of no value if God is dreaming and God has created all of this and is dreaming all this up? So that becomes a very difficult period. That period becomes, that undoing becomes incredibly difficult until you get to that point of realizing I can't figure this out. With the mind that has created this dream of separation, I can't figure it out. And that's where I know the course doesn't use this word, but the surrender, the alignment needs to come in. And realizing I do not know. Show me another way to see this. And it does sometimes require quite a radical shift in external changes, external circumstances. That can be seen as radical because it means adjusting everything about yourself. And like Steve was just saying, his idea of the spirit world and not really understanding what it looks like when he gets there, but knowing that there's something there, looking for it in science or quantum or thermodynamics or whatever the case may be, reading the Tao or Nisargadatta's work or whoever, there's still something missing. And what this course does so beautifully, not that it's better or more special, is it brings in the concept the Son of God is dreaming. God has nothing to do with this. And so at that initial period when you realize, because we've all believed God is taking care of us, God is watching us, God is, and then you're going to realize, actually, God's unaware that you as an individual exist. The Christ mind observes all of it. The Christ mind, through the Holy Spirit, is aware of the individuals, but also recognizes that the individuals aren't real. They're fractures of one dreaming mind. But for the seeker, for the character in the dream, that's a scary premise. And God's got nothing to do with this. So who's watching? Who's going to ensure I get taken care of? And that's where the sorting out period lines up, because now you've got to get to the understanding of your egoic nature, wrong-mindedness, and your right-minded Christ nature, which is your life force, which is permanently taking care of you, which is why you can develop the trust, and I trust my brothers who are one with me.
Mhm.
And until you make that switch in your mind, that beginning of a thought reversal, that first stage, moving into the second stage, can seem almost impossible. And why you'll see many a course teacher, without judgment, wants to shoehorn Christian principles into A Course in Miracles because they carry with them a guilt for Jesus having been crucified and being, beaten severely before he was killed. And they don't want to let go of that because they still carry the guilt within themselves. And so now they want to bring that into the course and say, well, Jesus is teaching the course, and then they go off on a tangent. That's the danger, because you've got to sort out you're on a non-dual path. And that means oneness. There's only one. And the Son of God is the extension of God, but isn't God. And until you make that clear distinction, you're going to get to that point realizing, but if God is dreaming and God is pure love, how can he dream up evil? Well, he can't. It's the Son who has forgotten he's the pure love extension of God, who's imagined something that is not loving. And that's the challenge in the first and moving into the second step of this curriculum.
Well, that's why I always, what you said there, that's why I always use the analogy of the dream, because to get people to understand we are aspects of God doing the dreaming. It's not God. God is dreaming in the same way like we dream at night. Everything's all functioning. The body's working, the digestive system's working, your lungs are going in and out.
Yeah.
But in your mind, there's a whole world going on in there that
Yeah.
don't appear to be aware of you.
Yes.
Yet you are their world. And you're watching them in your dream, and they're going about doing the most, in a nightmare, they can be doing the most evil things. And you're looking, as a matter of fact, you wake up afraid of what they've actually been doing. The relief is that it's a nightmare.
Yes.
You see, if you can, we are actually, in that aspect, are a microcosm of God. We are the God dreaming, and whatever goes on in a dream can be related to us.
Yes.
Also, like like I said the other week, I can't remember what it said, but it's like at Nisargadatta's, the three factors: the experiencer, the experience, and the experiencing. They're actually all the same thing, but we consider them to be separate into three things. But you can suss that out by your nighttime dreams. When you're looking at people in your nighttime dreams, they're not an experiencer experiencing an experience. They're just an experience. And that's all we are as well. We're just an experience. But because we don't know what we are, we try to dream up all these things, trying to explain what we actually are. In actual fact, it's just nothing. And our awakening is akin to us waking up in the morning and realizing that it was nothing I need worry, not at all.
Yeah.
And
that's
that's the old thing I keep
period of
quoting. Remember always that we can never be anywhere except within the mind of God, which is my favorite quote. And I keep on quoting it ad infinitum.
Please
Yeah.
do. Please do.
And that's where the period of sorting out comes in, because you've now got to make that very clear distinction between duality and non-duality. What is
Yeah.
right and what is wrong? Simply just not true. Not wrong as in it's bad. It's just simply not true. What is
A
true?
mistaken belief.
Yeah.
And it's always difficult, having learned that the changes in your life are always helpful. You must now decide all things on the basis of whether they increase the helpfulness or hamper it. Simple.
Mm.
Yeah.
And for me, going through that stage repeatedly, often, it was, oh gosh, does that mean I have to give up my motorcycle collection now? Oh gosh, do I have to give up my Ferrari now? Don't I have to sell everything I own and move to a mountain? Must I now go and meditate all day long? Must I now become a full-time teacher for God and hug people all day long?
Yes, that bit.
But
Hold on
probably
a
that
minute.
relates back.
I'm just getting something from God. Yes, to that bit. Yeah, you have to be a hugger from now on.
There's no way you could be talking to God right now. It's impossible.
Oh, you
Don't.
say that. You say that, but I'm special.
Isn't there
So,
something in the Bible where Jesus says, give everything to the poor and follow me?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but
But
And it was written by a poor person.
it's symbolic, isn't it? He says,
it's symbolic. It don't mean give all your stuff away. It means like give all
Well,
your love to the poor.
well, it
Follow
gives,
me, understand them,
yeah,
you
he
know.
said
but for
that.
me, it's
But
give
where do you
everything
find
that is
poor? I
real.
mean, poor in
Yeah, give
spirit.
everything that is real, not give things away. Give everything that is true away. Give your
Yes.
understanding away. Give your love away, which is true. Give your loving thoughts, which you share with God. It's not about things.
But the misinterpretation of that has led to a lot of people living unnecessarily in poverty because they think they've got to give everything away. You know, they think they're being devout by living as a hermit. There's an ancient church. I grew up in East Ham, and there's a very old 1,000-year-old Norman church there. And on the side of it is a little hut built onto it that's still there to this day, where a hermit lived, who spent all his time just living in this little hut and going in the church to pray, and then coming out and living in there. All he did was pray, making sure he had absolutely sod all, so he could absolutely contact with God, completely by even living next to the church. I mean, it's admirable what he did, but it weren't necessary, was it
Well, I
really?
don't know because
No.
I just spent 10 years.
But it is in form of retreat as well, come to think of it, you know.
Yeah,
Sorry, go on.
I just spent 10 years on bread and water with just one scratchy old Hessian sack that I used to wear every day, and I used to sleep on the stone floor just so that I could get closer to God.
Well, I suppose there's a fair
Yeah,
percentage of
well, I did none
masochists
of
in the
that.
world now.
I did none
Worked
of that.
out well. It's worked out well for me because I'm really close to the lawns of heaven now. I'm up on that top rung of the ladder, looking down on everyone. I watched all that food
Well
in the
done.
cupboards just rot. The lovely chocolate bars straight in the
Mm,
bin, orange
mm.
juice down the drain.
but
Well,
to coming
never
back
mind. It was worth it in the end.
yeah, let's get serious now, gentlemen.
Oh God, yes, sorry.
The important line is because he has valued what is really valueless.
Mm,
Will not generalize the lesson for fear of loss and sacrifice, and therein comes the challenge.
mm,
So you ask for the car, the house, the girlfriend. Why? Because you want to be happy. That's not what you want. You want happiness,
mm,
but you think you're asking for the things that'll make you happy.
mm-hmm,
And that's what you start to realize. That's what you're really giving up. You're giving up the idea of the things you thought were going to make you happy. When I went through the stage, I started giving things away. And it's amazing how quickly your friends come visit you when they're aware you're giving away
You give stuff away. Yeah.
stuff away. And thank goodness I had just given a fridge away and I realized, but where am I going to put the milk? And it hit me that, hang a second, what I'm being asked to do is not give things away, is give all of myself, pour myself back into the dream, lovingly, compassionately. Compassion, true compassion. Compassion is pure awareness. It's the dynamic awareness frequency, the dynamic awareness of being poured into your dream. You're pouring it back into the dream you've made in vengeance.
mm,
Now you're pouring love back into it and turning it into love. You now,
mm.
it was your making. It's now become your creation. Your
Yeah.
creation is sharing love, and that's why we always need to ask for what we really want. And what is it that we really want above all things? When you get to the very core of it, the peace of God that
Peace
transcends
of God.
understanding and to know.
Yeah,
That's what we really want.
yeah.
And then things are, the fridge is just a fridge, and a car is just a car, and a motorcycle collection is just a motorcycle collection, and a girlfriend is just something that lives very, very far away for now.
Mm.
To bring in the bit that we're talking about, that's clarified in the course as well, where it says, when I said sell everything you've got, give the money to the poor and follow me, and it clarifies what that means. Is just like it is that it's like show where your true value lies. It's not in the things. It's not, as we say a lot of the time, it's not the figurative things that's said. It's what it points to and what it symbolizes. And I'm
Yeah,
also
the other,
thinking about
sorry.
like a documentary I was watching recently about the Woodstock Festival, and there was a guy there. He's been in the original film that's been kicking around for 30, 40 years, but this was like a longer segment of his part. and he's cleaning the toilets at this festival with like 500,000 people, and he's cleaning the toilets like he's a midwife's just handed him like a brand new baby to just hold and wipe its brow as it comes into the world. And this guy says, one of my boys is down there in amongst that crowd for 3 days of love, peace, and music. And one of my boys is in Vietnam at the moment, which is what these people have coming together to kind of protest against. And here he was straddling those two things with his most precious children, cleaning the toilets in this way of just pouring infinite love into it, and
Wow,
blew my mind.
what a beautiful story.
Indeed, yeah. Really. All I was going to say was what you mentioned, I think, like Christ talking about give your things away and give everything to the poor and keep it. It just reminded me there are things in the course that are very well-known biblical phrasing, but been totally misinterpreted. Like we're saying about mocking God. Another one that's really is usually misunderstood is vengeance is mine, says the Lord, But they take it's another one. They take like he's threatening them again, like, you better not do that, otherwise my revenge will be terrible. Vengeance is leave it up to me, I'll sort them out, this sort of thing. But it just means leave it, yeah, just leave it. I'll worry about that. Don't worry about vengeance. Vengeance is predicting something from the past is bothering you to bring about a terrible future. Don't
Who
worry about
said
that.
who said something along the lines of God created man in his own image and we return the favor?
God created man in his own image and we return the favour. I don't know. I don't know who said that.
It's just that, you know.
Oh, no, I don't know about that returning the favour. I haven't heard that bit. The other bit in his own image, I mean, that's very common. But
Yeah,
that
it's
bit about,
it's like a comedian or someone who's just like saying, look, as far as that little story
Well,
goes, we return the favor. It's like we
we create him.
anthropomorphized.
We've created him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we anthropomorphized abstract, beyond form description, blah blah
Well,
blah,
who's
into
saying that?
a bloke who's angry.
yeah.
Well, I read in
That's the
this
kind of thing
Gadara
Billy
just
Connolly would have
recently.
said, right?
Pardon?
Billy Connolly would have said something like that.
Yeah, he would have said something like that. He would have done. Yeah, Billy Connolly. Yeah.
The Man Who Sued God, that beautiful movie,
Yeah.
when he sued the churches. But yeah, we go back to the whole value, what's
Yeah,
valuable.
yeah.
And right now, we're giving the most valuable thing we have, our understanding, whether we're right or wrong.
Hmm.
Because it's not the effect of what we're doing that really matters. It's our intention behind it. It's the meaning we put behind it. Are we truly sharing of ourselves lovingly without an agenda? We're not trying to sell books or create a new cult or sell retreats or whatever the case may be. What we do is for free. And we're genuinely, I believe I am, and I know you two are, is genuinely offering all I have in the most loving way I can and know how, which is to share my understanding. That's the word value. That's what's true value, but what's the closest truth in our understanding.
And you're only
And
sharing with them what's truly theirs.
yeah,
Said,
yeah,
this is mine, I'm giving it to you.
Mm.
This is mine, I'm telling you how to discover you've got it yourself. It's not like, I mean, that's why, I mean, if people want to charge for this sort of thing, that's great. It's up to them. I mean, even in the course, it says if you're some words to the effect, if you're a bit skint, like, you feel you need to charge something, charge. But to me, like, if to ask for money for this, you're asking somebody to pay for something they've already got. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
you've already got this. I'm just trying to let you know that you have, in the best way that I can understand it. I know that I know the truth because I just know. I'm honest with myself. I know this is the truth. If I'm going to accept it as truth, then I've got to accept it as truth. I can't speak about it in any other way. If I speak about it like I think this and I believe that, no, you got to know. Otherwise, you're not understanding it as truth. You must speak of it as truth. You see, and speak your truth, and if it's heard, it's heard. But the fact is, what you've got backing you up is it's truth, and that can't be denied. you know.
Stephen-tastic. That is Stephen Dean-tastic. Now, I'm glad you mentioned that, Lou, because it reminds me of that thing. Do you remember I shared with you that letter? I hope we're all right to talk about it, but Ken Wapnick sent that letter to Nick Arandes and said, I love your video of your comedy. You know, basically now just make sure that you strip it of completely any possible tinge of some sort of ego desire or, you know, what value. Interestingly, it's just like, you're doing something lovely, you're offering something great, you're good at it. Now make sure that you really, really, really have got nothing in that other than the desire. It's like sometimes I'll say to people, what better reason is there to be in possession of something other than to be able to give it away?
Yeah.
And in order to do that, like you're saying, Steve, backed up by truth, resonating in truth, aligned with truth.
Well, aligned what Luigi said about what Billy Connolly could have said, like, you know, we created God and then we created him in return. You know, I was just in Nisargadatta, I read quite recently, where someone's having problem understanding his I am thing. And he said, all right, then. He said, think of yourself as the creator and the created. He said, well, God created me. He said, no, no, he didn't. He said, you are the creator and you are the created. Think of yourself like that. I created all this. Don't worry about God. Just realize that you created all this. God will come later on once you've done that. You know, work on that. Don't keep thinking you're upsetting God. Just
Yeah.
understand that you are the creator of this, not him.
Yeah. But that's where the main error comes from. God created man in his own image. No, he didn't. The dreaming mind, the son of God, dreamt up atoms and kept dreaming them up, you know. So at first it was little fishy running around, and then they were dinosaurs, and then mammals
Amphibians
came
and
along,
then mammals and
and then
reptiles and
eventually created human monkeys, and then the Anunnaki came around and did some breeding, and yeah, we are, and ultimately it's just
a bit of
atoms becoming
surgery. Yeah.
sentient. God's got absolutely nothing to do with this. God extended himself and his son in his own, not, there's no image because God has no image. I am age. God is pure light.
Yeah.
So the extension of God is pure light. And so there's no image. God created his son from his essence. So that's, you know, you take those old biblical teachings and you try and make sense of them in non-duality, and they don't. You've got to throw those away. That's when you're throwing away the valueless. Those
Agreed.
old teachings are valueless. You've got to really empty your cup, you know, and really be ready to receive completely anew. It's at this third stage with the teacher of God must go can be called a period of relinquishment.
Yeah.
If this
Yeah.
is interpreted as giving up the desirable, so let's say you hung on to your old teachings,
Mm-hmm.
it will engender enormous conflict because now you're trying to make up. So does God have hands and arms? And is there God looking like a human creature up there somewhere? And Jesus sitting on the right hand of the Father, there's a hand again, you know, and sitting, so there's a throne and you've got to give up all of that. And we're getting closer and closer to science, quantum and understanding of non-duality is aligning, and it's just pure energy. Few teachers of God escape this distress entirely.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're trying to shoehorn their old dogmatic religions into this non-dual understanding. There is, however, no point in sorting out the valuable from the valueless unless the next obvious step is taken. And the obvious step is sell everything you've got, give it to Luigi, and then follow him only. And he will guide you. But
Hold on a
that's
minute. I
just
don't
my
remember
That's
opinion.
that bit.
that solves it all.
Therefore, therefore, the period of overlap is quite apt to be one in which the teacher for God feels called upon to sacrifice, here we go, his own best interests on behalf of truth. And that's the final ouch. And that's the big revelation when you realize, but everything I thought was going to make me happy hasn't. And so hang a second, why don't I just stop repeating the patterns,
Mm,
thinking of the scarcity or the fear or whatever it is that has bound me for lifetimes
mm,
in this lifetime too. And I'm now really willing to let it all go. But since I don't know what is good for me, let me not radically change everything, go become a hermit. Let me just abide in God, rest in awareness, rest in God, show me another way, and let me start dedicating time to communion. And that's when the real shift comes. He can learn this only, uh, I've got a cat in the way. He can learn only um, as he actually does give up the valueless. So in my case, it was my blind ambition to become a gazillionaire and build a multinational giant. And I was halfway there. I was in the path when I realized, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm not happy. I've got more than I've ever had. I've run out of garage space for motorcycles and cars and things. And I'm not any happier. In actual fact, the more I acquire, the more unhappy I become because the more I worry about the stuff. And that was my big turnaround. That was my big shift. And it was, look, it sounds easy. It was not easy because I used to make up lists of my motorcycles. Which ones am I getting rid of? And each one was part of my bucket list. And it was egoic wrenching, gut wrenching, you know. And then until I realized, but hang a second, the whole thing's a joke. Though through this, he learns that where he anticipated grief, he finds happy lightheartedness because it was the realization I need give up nothing. There's no sacrifice. As Jesus said in the Bible, I seek mercy and not sacrifice, mercy, forgiveness. And that's when it hit home. Wow. And it was okay. So it's the continuous practice of of forgiveness to both self for the guilt I may have felt for doing whatever I did, or the projection and vengeance and blame that I've projected onto others and seen myself as a victim of the world, and the constant forgiveness. And luckily for me, it was at this stage of my transition and awakening sequence that I then discovered Ho'oponopono. And it was such a useful tool. You know, the forgiveness, Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. We are healed. And that made this third stage for me. That's why I often recommend it, even though it's not in the course. Of course, it is in the course.
Yeah.
But it's such a useful process because that's when you start to find that happy lightheartedness. And unlike Steve, who was just a happy person day dot, I grew up as a miserable git. I was just continuously angry, you know,
It's hard to grasp, isn't it, Steve, that bit?
Born
I still
angry.
don't know how
What
to
am I
smile.
doing here?
Carry on.
First,
But it was such a beautiful awakening step, a step in the transcendence towards self. When I realized I've been really beating myself up about giving these things up that I'd worked so hard to get, and then it wasn't about giving anything up. And as Steve said, and then when you looked again, these just they weren't valuable. I live in Africa. What the hell was I doing driving a Ferrari? You know, I need a big 4x4 with big wheels because of potholes and nonsense and crocodiles crossing the street. Um, it was just such a beautiful transition, and as a consequence, 20 years, 25 years later, I live such a simple, humble, peaceful life. I could never have imagined this.
Mm.
but it was a necessary path for you. Because
Oh, yeah.
once you reach the end of the path, you realise, wait a minute, but it was necessary for you to recognise what you really are and what was really happening to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it? I just want to say, because before you said something about the image of God, man being made in the image of God.
Mm.
I mean, really, I used to go around saying, once I realised that God isn't a man-shaped being, the mind is in the image of God, not the body or anything physical. The mind is the image of God. And I used to sort of teach that and tell people that. And then I realised that not even the mind is in the image of God.
Yeah.
Not even that. What's in the image of God is what isn't even an image, it's an awareness, as Nisargadatta emphasizes so much. That's why I like his affirmations of things in the course. He puts emphasis on things that for me anyway, that I personally understand well. And he affirms that, like, the image of it's actually God is the awareness of the mind and the body. Stephen Dean is a mind and a body. I am the supreme being, as Nisargadatta says, like, as his guru told him, and as Nisargadatta has told me by proxy through his book. But then it's just an affirmation because I'd already gathered that through A Course in Miracles anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but even if we want to talk about the Father and the Son and what it says in the course, there's nowhere the Father ends and the Son begins. It's
Hmm.
basically still a symbolic language to say that we are the
Yes.
Son, we are dreaming, God is down the road not dreaming. It's, the extension of that awareness, the extension of that light. It's not a separate thing, is it? It's not the
Correct.
Son, the Father, because there's nowhere
Yeah.
the Father ends and the Son begins.
Well, you can nutshell
as
that.
that as that
Go on,
awareness
sorry.
as that awareness extended and expanded, a tiny mad idea seemed to enter it and disappeared in a flash. And
Yeah.
we're just living through the flash of the photograph that was taken, and we still think that flash is going to last 15 billion years, blah blah blah, but it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I forgot what I was going to say now, don't matter.
Was it something about giving all your stuff to Luigi?
No.
That's a shame, Lou. It was good. You
Oh,
planted the
come on.
seed. So
Well, we're at different life stages. So what Steve finds valuable, I don't want yet.
Yeah, well, I don't want any motorbikes either.
brilliant. So the period of settling down, the quiet time in which the teacher of God rests a while in what I like, reasonable peace. Now he consolidates his learning. So basically, you're taking stock, and I love the use of the word transfer. Now he begins to see the transfer value of what he's learned. So you've learned a principle, you can understand how to switch that principle, which is from valuable to valueless, vice versa. But it's just this quiet time where you've got a reasonable amount of peace, where you're consolidating, you're beginning to see the value of that. And the potential is literally staggering, which is really important language. The teacher of God is now at the point in his progress at which he sees in it his whole way out. And then here we go, give up what you do not want and keep what you do. How simple is the obvious? And when I was up on the hills with Georgina and the dog this afternoon, prior to meeting up with you guys, and as you know, she's not a course student, but she's with us in exactly the same. She's doing the same inner work, but
In other words, she's much happier than the rest of us.
and we were breaking it right down to say, what the course just basically says: you're not what you think you are. That seed, that to crack the seed, like right back there, kind of thing. That germinating idea. You're not what you think you are, and it's like, okay, so what am I? Right, okay, great. I'm glad that you've asked. You've asked
Yeah.
yourself, because now you've asked yourself is going to look for the answer in what it sees outside, quote unquote, and that will be reflected back to the point where we get to that incredible quote: when you want only love, you'll see nothing else. How
Yes.
amazing is that? When you want only
Come on.
love, you will see nothing else.
Yeah. It's so aligned with that teaching in the Bible, seek ye only the kingdom of heaven and all else shall be given you. And what is all else? Love. You
Mm.
know, it's only love. It's not God's going to give you things. It's God is going to give you the joyous love you are, the recognition thereof, the awareness of the awareness you are. I'm glad your story didn't end up with you giving your dog away. That would have been.
Never. I
If
love
you
that guy. I'm not even going back to heaven because I want to stay here with my dog. I love him so much.
if you align love, like the idea of eternal love, with the idea of eternal silence, it becomes a bit easier to grasp because silence is eternal.
Yes.
Silence is always silent. Silence doesn't have a beginning and an end.
Mm,
Noise has a beginning and an end.
mm,
There's only silence.
mm,
It's easy to understand that silence is forever. So
mhm.
is love. So is peace. It's forever. Like Nisargadatta says, there's silence, then you say something, then there's silence. If you never say anything again, there's still the silence.
Yeah,
And that silence is the love of God.
yeah.
It's easy to ally silence to eternity than anything else. It's a great
Yeah.
clue, that is.
Stephen Dean Tastic again. Bang
Yep.
on. Hammer hits the nail on the top in one swipe. And it makes
Yeah.
me think of Alan Watts saying the only way you can have a musical melody is because of the silence in between the notes.
Yeah,
Silence between words. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, there's the transfer of value. He begins to see the transfer of value in what he has learned. So that's when it really hits home. How many people have you heard saying, "But I find it so difficult to forgive them," you know?
Mhm.
And hang a second, forgiveness sets you free. Now you really understand. Stage one, forgiveness, you forgiving to release yourself from it. Stage two, you forgiving them because you realize it never happened. So I'm just
Yeah.
keeping myself bound through blame, by blaming and judging. And so the minute I forgive, I release the judgment and I release myself from being trapped and seeing myself as a victim of the world I made. Um, and it's now that the teacher of God is at the point in his progress which he sees the whole way out. And the whole
Mhm.
way out is simply abide in God, gratitude, and anything that triggers you straight back into forgiveness.
Yeah.
That's your function.
Yeah.
And that's the answer. There's only one answer. And we get so trapped into the effects, cause and effect, and trying to understand why I did this and why is this happening to me and what was I thinking when I crashed my car or what was I thinking when someone crashed into me or whatever thoughts we're having. There's one problem. You're asleep dreaming this nightmare. And there's one solution. Awaken to self. And here's the process. Forgive until you realize there's nothing to forgive because you've done this unto yourself, Holy
Mhm.
Son of God. And that's you start to see the whole way out, the whole big picture. How simple is the obvious? Secrets of the Obvious series. Uh, how simple is the obvious? I've done this to myself. There's no one to blame. There's no one outside me. I'm dreaming up every single character in the universe. I'm dreaming up the whole universe.
Mm.
And I am seeing the dream right now from this perspective, but simultaneously from 8 billion perspectives on this planet, 9 septillion throughout the universe. And it's all me, the Holy Son of God, simply never left his Father's kingdom, extending the love of God, thinking I'm this. Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Beautiful indeed.
Utterly.
What about this the importance of like doing away with the scale as well in terms of like that lesson really early on. I don't know if it's as early as lesson 5 where it says there's no small upsets. So you know what you're saying about when that next thing flags up that says, right, I need to forgive that, I need to forgive that. And we have this kind of impression of like there's great big massive obvious things, triggers, stuff from childhood, worldviews, blah blah blah. Oh, I'm working my way through it. I've got rid of all the big stuff now. Now I've just got these tiny little things that are buried, like that'll only come up in my dreams if I'm da. There are no small upsets. It's like every single instant you are either choosing love or you're not choosing to see the love. That's your only choice.
Yeah.
So the forgiveness, to have that gratitude for whatever comes up, it's like, quoting Keith Kavanagh and saying welcoming is his latest term. And I was talking to him about this, and it's like, what a brilliant word. It's like, you're welcoming whatever's next instead of, oh my God, I thought I was healed, I thought I was perfect and I'd sorted, I've just realized I've got a prejudice against that, or I feel this way. It's like, brilliant, there you go, then that's your next thing, because that's not tiny, that's not buried and like hidden at the back of the drawer. There are no small upsets. That's as massive as saying I don't like blah blah blah. That's obvious, that's a worldview. It's like, so to welcome anything that comes up for you is a chance of just like choose again, isn't it? It says it in the course, choose again.
Well,
Yeah.
Christopher is saying to me, I need to choose again. I'm either going to feed him or else he's going to keep disturbing my camera. So you guys have to excuse me for a second.
No worries. Tell Christopher to enjoy. Hope he's going to have some tofu. I don't want
Come
him
on,
to cause any suffering by eating a fish.
feed you. Well, yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, how simple is the obvious and how easy to do. The teacher of God needs this period of respite. He's not yet come as far as he thinks, yet when he's ready to go on, he goes with mighty companions beside him. Now he rests a while and gathers them before going on. He will not go on from here alone. And again, symbolically, it's about aligning, isn't it? You know, from he goes with mighty companions beside him. He'll not go on from here alone. It's like aligning yourself with the collective spirit of what we are in truth.
It's
That's
recognizing the oneness of everybody, isn't it?
turning that dial right the way up, so that what you're doing as of that point is no longer based on this myopic little isolated view that you've got it all sussed up here. It's now like, right, I need to get past what's going on in here, tap in to the one mind, your favorite quote, you know, you can't ever be anywhere else but in the mind of God. And then the symbolic use of the mighty companions, it's like saying everything floods in and all of a sudden you've tapped in to the full flow of the river. You're not in some tiny little stream somewhere. You're getting carried by the full flow of the river from here on in.
Right. Also, like, you know, that thing, forever within the mind of God.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and Nisargadatta again addresses that by just saying, oh, we talked about it before, but anyway, like people think that they end at their skin. You know, like if you're within the mind of God, it extends right out until the unit, or at least as far as your world is only what you can see and hear around it.
Mm-hmm.
That is you.
Mm.
We think it's just us sitting inside this skin and bones. It's not. That the whole world is you. You've created all of it, not just what you think it is. You're the creator. You
Mm.
think it's something else has done it, but it isn't. You've done it.
Mm.
This is the amazing. This is separation at its very finest, if it can be described as such. You're separated from a world you've created, and you think someone else did it
Yeah.
or something else did it.
But
No, it didn't.
that's a great
You've
part
done
of the
it.
course when it talks about, you know, you need that dissociation for the insanity to be able to continue.
Yeah.
Because if you did look at it with that same perspective that you just explained, the whole thing
Yeah.
just falls apart. So in order for it to keep going, the ego thought system needs you to not look. That's why it says, you know, the ego doesn't want you to know you've got a mind. It's because if you realize you've got a mind, then
It,
there's choice point. And if there's choice point, guess what? You can choose again, brother.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, that's what it says. It keeps you encased inside a body. The ego keeps you inside this body, when in fact you're the entire universe, as far as you can see and hear. That's as I just said. That's the trick. That's the division. That's the separation. You're not separate from the you. All of it is you. You've been tricked into thinking it's not, though. You think you're this little body looking around at it all when you are it all. Grasp it, forgive it, forgive yourself for thinking differently. You
Forgive
know,
me, Steve, for I know not what I do.
yeah. That goes for everybody who thinks this is real.
So we've got
You
the
know,
next stage is indeed a period of unsettling, because how could it not be? You've spent your whole time. Hold on a minute. I've got a visitor. Oh, hello, here he is. So the period of unsettling, because you've spent your whole life prior to that identifying as the opposite of what you actually are. You do not know the thing that you are. So how can it not be unsettling? Because you've got to understand that you didn't really know what was valuable and what was valueless. And all that you really learned so far was that you didn't want the valueless and that you did want the valuable.
Hmm.
But you've realized now that that is the truth is in reverse of what you thought was valueless and valuable. And your own sorting out was meaningless because you need to be able to tap in, as it describes here, you know, you haven't come as far as you think. You go with mighty companions when you have, because you are casting that wider net to your what are fractured aspects of yourself. You're dialing in to the larger truth that you can't reach if you carry on your own, thinking that you know what's what, because you don't know what sacrifice is. That's
Yep.
made it impossible for you to judge. You thought you learned willingness.
Yep.
Now he sees that he doesn't know. He doesn't know what the willingness is for, and now he must attain a state that may remain impossible to reach for a long, long time. And so look at that. And now he must attain a state that may remain impossible to reach for a long, long time. He must learn to lay all judgment aside and ask only what he really wants in every circumstance. That's amazing, isn't it?
No, really.
It's
And
it's
also,
probably one of the most important lines in the manual for teachers
mm,
because it's a recurring theme throughout the course, and that is because it's the most difficult. It's remember, we're not thinking. We think we think. It's the dreaming mind thinking all the time. So the dialogue is continuously there, even if you've understood the non-dual. The broadcasts of the ego mind are continuous, and they're continuous judgments about you and everything else.
Mm.
And it's realizing that when you think you've had a judgment, they're not your judgments. You, the individual, the jiva, the projection, you're not having that judgment. So don't beat yourself up about it. Recognize you are the Holy Son of God, the observer, observing these judgmental broadcasts, and you're just going to dial the volume down. Because if you don't do that, you think, but hang a second, I haven't achieved anything, I haven't come anywhere. And that's why it seems like a long, long time. But if you get that, if you could truly rest as awareness, and as you pour yourself back into the world, realize the dialogue's still continuing.
Yeah.
I'm completely aligned with right-minded thinking, but the dialogue's continuing. So now, no, thank you. I'm not paying attention to anymore. I've gone the direct experience. I've looked at where it comes from. I've realized that it has no true source. I've looked at who it's talking to. It's not talking to anyone. It's trying to make everyone believe that they are someone when there is actually no one. There's only oneness. And if you can get that step, you transcend that, and that long, long time becomes this holy instant.
Mm.
and the irony of all that is there's no judgment at all in oneness.
Yes,
Like in this opposing as this, I mean, how can you have judgment in oneness? Is only one thing. It's nothing
100%.
to judge anything against.
Yeah, yeah.
Judgment can't exist. It only exists when you enter consciousness where you've got things to judge. Once you get back to oneness, it disappears. It's wholly a thing of the ego. It's nothing to do with judgment of awareness. It's just awareness. Awareness doesn't judge. It's just aware of the mind judging. If you can disconnect this from this judgment, you just realize there's no judgment in oneness. I mean, it's like, again, like the word merely, you know what I mean? Like you said to Steve Vai, the word merely, the course keeps coming out with merely. Like he says, yeah, like merely move a mountain, which I thought was a good comeback, you know. But merely don't judge. But that's not easy in here because we live in a world where everything's separated into positive and negative. You daily judgments between this, that, because everything's separated. You just got to
Well,
realize you're in a script that goes like that anyway, and you just be aware of it.
Even labeling is a judgment, and that's what we do. We label
Yeah,
everything,
really,
and then
everything's God. We
and
just
then we
named
rank
all the
order.
bits. Yeah,
Then we rank order, So
yeah. This
that's
is
more
the
valuable than that, and that just gets us
this is
then into
best and this
dialogue.
is worst. Yeah, and all that. Yeah, and everything in between.
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
really
You know,
appreciate that as well, Lou, what you were saying, because it reminds me of like something that I've reflected on during the time that we've been doing these chats, which obviously I really enjoy at the time that we're having them, but the enjoyment's left with me afterwards. The inspiration is like stays with me between get-togethers. So therefore, I'm contemplating our conversations that have taken place on the 5 or 6 occasions we've pressed record. But there's one ongoing conversation which stays with me, and I've grown through these get-togethers. Through Steve's simplicity has rubbed off on me. Your earnestness has rubbed off on me as well, and your kind of commitment to be steadfast. So I'm thinking back to like the episodes where Steve said as soon as he got the course, he knew it was true, and you shared that you'd had a similar experience, even though you came back to the course a couple of years later. And then it took me back to like the first time I got the course, and I was thinking, I actually, yeah, I know what that means now in my context, because for me, when I read that line, what is all encompassing can have no opposite, that was the sledgehammer crashing onto my third eye and decalcifying it. In and out came the light. And that's what I've been looking for, for however many years prior to that. And when you say about dialing down the volume of the mind activity that we call ego, because we study this system where the person who dialed into our collective consciousness, not unconscious, but the mind outside the dream, she was a psychologist who liked Shakespeare and had had a lifelong battle with accepting the teachings and the message of Jesus. So we know those elements appeared in how she downloaded this material.
Yeah.
And for her to use the word ego, and from my experience of that to be like, basically someone saying to me, that's not you, you're not that mental activity. That was the freeing experience for me as a young man that I could not get to on my own. If you'd have left me on a desert island with birds tweeting and just perfect fruit to eat and no predators for a million years, I don't know whether I'd have got to that. But to read it in the course and to go, oh my God, that is true. And to have this sort of sense of like turning, just going, this knowledge isn't from round here. This isn't from, I know, I just know that this knowledge in this system is from outside of this nonsense. And to be able, but to be able to like get that separation from the ego and to know that that's not the entirety of your identity, or then to learn it's not your identity at all, you do then need to allow yourself in that journey the understanding that that's not going to stop. You can quieten it, you can grow the distance between you and it as like, and then sometimes it'll be like that, and sometimes it'll go like that, and it's because everything's all in movement and in flux. And people think that they're going through these stages, and well, you can almost imagine people having like badges on going a number 4, like oh, it's like, don't do that to yourself. Just know the whole thing's in flux. Some days that'll be loud, some days it'll be quiet. But guess what? Nothing I see means anything. Lesson
Yeah.
number 1, I've given the
Yeah.
meaning, everything has lesson number 2.
And one of the great things that Carol Howe, which I find to be the most dynamic course teacher of our age, is she constantly reminds us, don't go back and beat yourself up when you find yourself catching yourself judging or evaluating it and saying, how could I have seen it that way? You were doing it the best way you knew how at that specific moment in illusionary time. But you've now caught yourself, and now let's move forward. Um, just lay all judgment aside of self and others.
Yeah.
And when you come to that recognition that you're not thinking, you're being thought through. You're a device through which your dreaming mind is thinking through, acting through, doing through.
Mm-hmm.
You're not even that device. You're that which observes all of it, gradually and gently, over 16 billion years and in space-time illusion, awakening to the Christ you are. The Christ, the awakened, anointed, holy Son, holy extension of God. You're that. So next time you're having a yak session and you're about to react and you're having an argument with whoever you're having an argument with in your head, go, hang a second, that's not actually happening. It's broadcasting. I'm seeing the movie, I'm listening to the words and watching the voice, the screen, and I'm bought into it, and I've now reacted. That's what it's trying to get me to do. That fear, what is ego? It's just fear, the fear part of our dreaming mind. That fear part of our dreaming mind fears awakening because it has a fear of death and a fear of a vengeful God that's going to punish it. We now know it's not true. There is no vengeful God. There is no punishment. There's just a gentle, gradual awakening to the Christ self we are.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not get into the dialogue. Let's not go into it. Let's not blame the dialogue. Let's just simply say, like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, get me behind me, ego. Get me behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
Get behind me, Satan. Just no thanks. I'm not listening to this anymore. And
Beautiful.
it's not spiritual bypassing. It's the recognition of what is true and what is not. vigilance for God. And okay, no, thank you. And I'd rather focus my attention on gratitude and how can I pour myself passionately into my dream world and be of truly, truly helpful to the rest of my siblings.
Beautiful.
I can relate to that, Carolyn Howe, Maxim there you said, because I dealt with guilt because I used to have like, guilt, a lot of memories back in the past. And they suddenly jump out of me, jump on me back, and go, oh, God, like, memories from the past that are not very uncomfortable. And then it dawned on me, like some time back, that whatever it is in the past that's bothering me now, when it occurred, I did, at the time, I thought it was the best thing to do,
Mm,
right? Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. At the
mm,
time, no
Absolutely.
matter what it was, I thought it was the best thing to do. So here I am in a different frame of mind. You see, because the mind doesn't understand past or future, it presents it back to you like it's happening now somehow. So you
yes.
go, "Oh God, did I say that?" Yeah, but and you're cringing about something that's wholly redundant because when you did say it, you thought it was the best thing to do. So the whole guilt thing's stupid anyway. And Caroline Howard, that's a great maxim. Remind me to thank her if I ever meet her.
It's like you've
Truly.
reached the point of being a toddler and you can walk, and you're looking back on when you could crawl, going, "Why didn't I walk?"
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you're at the
I
stage
should have
where all you could
walked.
do was crawl.
Yeah, that's absurd. That really points out the absurdity of the whole thing.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
Stephen Dean rubbing off on me. I'm finding simple ways to explain things.
Well, I promise I'm a bit simple.
And eventually we'll all get to the stage where you go completely quiet and you realize all of that teaching and all those talks and all those retreats and all of that reading, if I just gone straight to being quiet,
Yeah,
you know, and okay, it's the beautiful sequence, I call it. It's just a beautiful sequence. And thank goodness, unlike a Ramana Maharishi who had a drastical shake-up at the age of 8, and by the time he was 15, we're just gradually letting go of the valueless, just gradually. So you can still enjoy your motorcycles for now, Lou.
yeah.
That's right. So finally, there's a period of achievement. It's here that learning is consolidated. Now, what was seen as merely shadows, there's merely again, Steve.
Yeah.
Now, what was seen as merely shadows before becomes solid gains to be counted on in all emergencies as well as tranquil times.
Absolutely.
Indeed, the tranquility is their result, the outcome of honest learning, consistency of thought, and full transfer.
Mm.
I love that full transfer because now
Absolutely.
that's saying, now you know what's valuable and what's valueless. And again, this is the
Yeah.
beautiful way that all of these just interconnect with one another.
And it is consolidation. That is the right word entirely. You're consolidating all the ideas that float around in my head, and then suddenly you get this affirmation, and they consolidate into the oneness,
Yeah.
consolidate into one idea.
And that one idea is it takes great learning to understand that all things, events, encounters, and circumstances are helpful. It's only to the extent to which they are helpful that any degree of reality should be accorded them in this world of illusion. The word value can apply to nothing else. It's, they all just collapse in on themselves, these 6 stages. It's so spot on.
Yeah. And also again, as I've mentioned before, so you'll get to these periods of aha, and then there's this bliss that comes through you. Like, wow, you really understood. And I'm using layers, another layer. Wow. And then you think you've got it. Don't think you've got it. Because the minute you think you've got it,
You haven't.
next layer. And so that's why I say you're going through this continuously. And then there's moments of you can't even speak. It's just
Mm,
so wow.
yeah, beautiful.
But this is where the direct experience, solid gains, because it's direct experience and it's giving you evidence.
Yeah.
The more I practice forgiveness, the world starts smiling back at me. The
Mm,
more I smile, the world smiles back at me. It's all in my mind.
mm,
If we expect the world to go quiet for us to go quiet within, forget it.
mm,
And realize the world's an outer reflection of an inner condition. So If I go quiet within, I see a quiet world. If I go joyful within, I see a joyful world. If I trust my brothers in my mind and I'm not imagining they're out to get me, so like Steve says, he walks up to the nastiest guy in the room and the guy smiles at him because in his mind, he's already chosen to have that relationship.
Mm.
For me, it was a radical because I always thought I had to be the meanest guy in the room. I had to be the toughest guy in whichever circumstance I had. I had to make sure that people were scared of me so that I stayed safe.
Mhm.
And it was letting that go and realizing if I smile, and still, if I go to certain of my old groups, you know, to the special forces unit that I used to belong to way back 30 years ago, those people are still afraid of me. And when I smile, they're like, "What's wrong, Lou? Are you okay? Are you dying? Is there something wrong?
Do we
You're
need to
so
get
happy.
a doctor?
You ready to go? Or are you busy going? Because this is how
You got
people look like
wind.
just before they cross
He's
over.
got
They're
wind.
happy. And it's quite funny for me to observe this now. And then I watch people after a couple hours relax in my company, and they never did in the past. And the gentleness now can flow, and people start to open up.
Mm.
And as I said, I walk in shopping centers and people smile at me. And in the past, I keep, look, something wrong. Is my zip open? And it's getting used to the world's reflecting back at you.
Yeah.
But if you expect the world to change for you to find peace, forget it. It's got to come from within. It changes here first,
Mm.
and then you offer it. And as you offer it, it's reflected back at you. One of the mistakes we make is thinking we're going to apply law of attraction, because law of attraction is the ego's way of sharing the law of one, God's immutable law of one. What's given one is given to all. So we try and make manifest. We try and attract through the law of attraction. What are you attracting? People, places, things, and events. Idolatry. More manifestation. What do you really want? You want to move into flow. You don't need to attract the love of God. You are the love of God. You just need
Yeah,
to open and let the love of God flow through you. And that is the stage of real peace. Because yeah, you are already in heaven. Yeah, you are already in the real world. And you've got the direct experience thereof. There's no more guessing and there's no more faith required. It's knowing. There's no need for faith when there's knowing. And what do you know? You can't put it into words because it's just the peace of God that transcends understanding. And that's it. Stop there. What a
Beautiful.
beautiful
yeah, I can't
journey.
top
What a beautiful journey.
that.
Beautiful.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Beautiful. And also, like, if we are going back to this thing about the stages, and if we take the symbolism of God will take the final step, you don't even have to measure your progress as you see it because it's irrelevant. It's just like, just keep journeying, keep bringing as much love as you can through your part of the mind to every situation. And when you've cleared enough of that shit out of your head, guess what happened? God will take the final step. You'll just go, be gone.
For Feather Silence, the title of my
Mm,
next book.
What was that? Sorry.
nice.
Poof, feather, silence. The final step. You know? Yeah, and this is a line I use often, sometimes just as an excuse, when I get invited to go to retreats overseas or in Cape Town. Who would go anywhere if peace of mind is already complete? What for?
Yeah, it's this last little bit is just incredible. This is the stage of real peace, for here is heaven's state fully reflected. Now, if we're going to, in the course which says this will be believed entirely or not at all,
100%.
this will
Yeah.
be believed entirely or not at all. Okay, so bear that in mind, and then take that state in there. This is the stage of real peace, for here is heaven's state fully reflected.
Yep.
That's absolutely major. From here, the way to heaven is open and easy. This course will be believed entirely or not at all. In fact, it is here this course will be believed entirely or not at all. And now, Lou, your line, who would go anywhere if peace of mind is already complete? And who would seek to change tranquility for something more desirable? What could be more desirable than this?
Only ice cream.
Strawberry flavour.
There isn't any strawberry ice cream in my bread and water life where I sleep on the stone floor and wear a Hessian sack.
Well, you got everything to look forward to then.
And I self-flagellate every morning because I'm just not worthy.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
There's only 5 reasons why I would incarnate again, and that is an ice cream is one of them.
Amazing. Right. Let's see what our cigarette smoking friend with 9 children living in a small flat in Bombay has to say. So, how am I to practice desirelessness? No need of practice, no need of any acts of renunciation. Just turn your mind away, that is all. Desire is merely the fixation of the mind on an idea. Get it out of its groove by denying it attention. That is all? Yes, that is all. Whatever may be the desire or fear, don't dwell upon it. Try and see for yourself. Here and there you may forget, it doesn't matter. Go back to your attempts till the brushing away of every desire and fear, of every reaction becomes automatic. How can one live without emotions? You can have all the emotions you want, but beware of reactions, of induced emotions. Be entirely self-determined and ruled from within, not from without. Merely giving up a thing to secure a better one is not true relinquishment. Give it up because you see its valuelessness. As you keep on giving up, you will find that you grow spontaneously in intelligence and power and inexhaustible love and joy. Why so much insistence on relinquishing all desires and fears? Are they not natural? They are not. They are entirely mind-made. You have to give up everything to know that you need nothing, not even your body. Your needs are unreal and your efforts are meaningless. You imagine that your possessions protect you. In reality, they make you vulnerable. Realize yourself as away from all that can be pointed at as this or that. You are unreachable by any sensory experience or verbal construction. Turn away from them. Refuse to impersonate. After I've heard you, what am I to do? Only hearing will not help you much. You must keep it in mind and ponder over it and try to understand the state of mind which makes me say what I say. I speak from truth. Stretch your hand and take it. You are not what you think yourself to be, I assure you. The image you have of yourself is made up from memories and is purely accidental.
Very nice. So what he said there about emotions being ideas, it's always occurred to me like emotions, thoughts, if you're like, if someone's afraid of something, are they still afraid when they're not thinking about being afraid? Are they? They can't
No.
be. If they're not thinking about it, they can't be afraid. They start thinking about it, then they're afraid. Then they're not afraid. And also this stuff about projection, one of the easiest examples of stuff being projected around you. If somebody's in love, the world around them is just a lovely world. They see everything as beautiful and wonderful and this, that, and the other. You know, if somebody's pissed off, you know, really, he just sees more stuff to make him even more angry. He interprets events as something to make him angry and starts
Yes.
getting annoyed with people and stuff like that. In fact, I've got a story from a very young age. I thought that people being annoyed, what they automatically started shouting at somebody else. Because I noticed, like, if my mum got annoyed about something, she started shouting at me, but it wasn't my fault. She was annoyed about something else. But I just accepted that annoyance was spread around. I never met anything different. It wasn't until I was about 19 and I was working on the council, working as a labourer for a slab layer, you know, the paving stone layer. And we were in the cafe drinking our tea, and a bloke who delivered the sand come in and started screaming and hollering at the bloke I was working for, Denny Coe, his name was, never forgot him, screaming, nodding at him, saying, "Come and unload my sand." He's going, "I'm having my breakfast, clear off, I'll be out when I'm finished." Anyway, when he finished, he went out and he's arguing away with this lorry driver, screaming and shouting at each other. Then suddenly he went to this lorry driver. He said, "Steve, can you get that stuff and put it over there and do this for me and get that started and I'll be with you in a minute." "All right, my mate." "Now listen here, right?" It, it was the first time I'd ever seen anybody not direct their anger, purposely stopping it.
Yeah.
It wasn't my fault. So he didn't shout at me.
Wow.
His anger just stopped like a commercial break. And he just looked at me and said, "Oh, a totally different manner." And then went straight back into his anger again. I've never seen anybody do that before. But that bloke, Denny Coe, he showed me that it wasn't necessarily to be reflected all over the place.
Wow.
That bloke was an important incident in my life, and he has no idea. But he made me realise you don't have to spread anger around all over the place, just because you're upset, everyone else has got to be, you know. Anyway, that
And
was
more
my
importantly,
tale of my
and not
not
react in
react.
an anger way. Yeah, that was the big
Yeah.
one. That was my
Mm.
lesson because
It's a
I was
choice, isn't it?
I was reacting. It was a choice. And go back to your fear question. When that hammer drops, the fear disappears. Why? Because the thinking stopped. I
Mm.
mean, what
Yeah.
would be wrong with your life if you weren't thinking about it?
Yeah.
What would be wrong with your
Exactly.
emotions if you weren't giving it any thought?
Yeah.
Would anything be wrong if you weren't feeling and thinking? No.
Mm.
And we've got to remember the sequence so that as we fell asleep, it's perception, projection, and then there's thought, then there's sensation, then there's feeling, then there's emotion. And by the time you're trapped in the emotion, screaming, shouting, you're you're so far removed from perception, you're not even aware that you're awareness anymore. Awareness is receded into the substrata
Mm.
in which you are contained, but you're unaware that you're there.
Mhm.
Fish is in the ocean, unaware he's in water, looking for the water,
Yeah.
angry at the temperature.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what could be more desirable than this? And I speak from my own personal experience now that I have tranquility, and when it appears not to be the recognition, I catch it so quickly, I'm able to move myself straight back into it in, incredibly quickly. And the anger that used to rise up, as you know, ego always speaks up first in the morning, just you catch it up almost instantly, and now it's become a joke.
Mm.
It's become a moment where I catch it and it becomes a joke, and I start laughing every single morning.
Mhm.
If you're living in the same house as I am and you hear me laughing in the morning, I've just caught the angry thought,
Yeah.
and that's become the way. And really, this is direct experience.
Mm.
I This is the beauty of it. I could never have imagined that life could be so peaceful. You know,
Mm.
and the character's still a character. The dialogue is still there, although it's dialed down to volume one on a scale of 100
Mhm.
most of the time. And every now and again you hear it pick up to 20, 25, and dial it back down. No thanks.
Mm. Full transfer.
Yeah.
Full transfer.
Full transfer of valueless and valuable. Beautiful.
Something else I just want to mention to those listening.
Mm.
There will be times in your life, fourth stage, where you want to recede. You want to go into the cave. You want to be alone. You want to avoid. You want to detach. You want to be alone. You really want to recede into the cave, be the hermit for a while. And that's okay. But do realize that at some stage, the dialogue will start, and it'll want you to pour back out, pour your
Mm.
passionate, primordial Christ nature back into the world and really love your creation.
Mm.
So be aware that there is a time for silence, for retreat, for just abiding and
Mm.
alone.
Mm.
And that is the time when you're doing all your shadow work and really understanding all your gains and refining your understanding. But there will come a time when you're ready to go out and truly be a teacher for God, not necessarily as in teaching and doing YouTube videos or retreats, but you really will be able to go out and be the reflection of Christ
Mm.
to all those that are being mirrored back at you.
Mm.
So be
And
aware of that stage
yeah,
too. It's fine.
beautiful.
My
Demonstrate that
period
you're not an
lasted
ego.
12 years, 12, 13, 14 years. But, and I'm only really sort of coming out of it in the last 2, 3 years now that I'm really coming back out. We all go through that as well. Be aware of that.
Yeah, I know I might be repeating myself, but who cares? I like to use the songwriting process to explain exactly what you've just explained. Sometimes I'm going to have a guitar in my hand, sometimes I'm going to have a pen to write lyrics, and then I'm going to go through periods where I don't pick up the guitar and the pen, but the songwriting process is still in play because I'm either contemplating and reflecting and absorbing experience, or I'm having the experiences that I'm going to contemplate and reflect upon and absorb, which are then going to be presented as a song with lyrics. And none of those stages are more important than others.
Absolutely.
It's a self-feeding circle. And to go back to earlier when you described the serpent, yeah.
Well, all the steps leading up to the last step are just as important as the last step, but getting you there to it. Are they not?
There we go. Steve Dean hits the nail on the head again. I'm going to get you a hammer. I'm going to send you a hammer in the post, and every time you do one of these, we expect you to go ding like that. Stephen Dean, simplicity, straight in.
Why not? Why not?
Beautiful, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Lovely, as always. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you too.
guys. Thank you. We
Been a
continue
very
with
enjoyable
honesty
chat.
next week.
See you next week. That
Take
was a
care.
great chat.
Yeah.
Okay, my mates.
Be well.
Be
Be
well.
you. Be well, the
Cheers.
barrier. Lovely. I love yous. I'll see you next week. Ta-ra.
Cheers, Steve.